Hey neighbor, welcome back to Beyond ARTV. My name is John, and it's time for another episode of Hate It or Love It. On this episode, we're going to be breaking down 5 reasons why the internet hates Ghost. Ghost are an alternative metal and hard rock band from Sweden formed in 2006. They're a group that I actually really enjoy, but over the years, I've started to realize that a lot of people do not feel the same way. With every group known to man that has a little bit of fame, there's going to be hate, there's going to be love, and there's going to be indifference. So I always find it kind of shocking when people in the comments with this show are like, oh my god, there's people out there that don't like them? People, there are always going to be people that do not like certain things. It's okay if they actually have a reason to back it up, and not everybody has to have the same viewpoint as you. It would be very boring if they actually did. But today, let's look at 5 reasons why people actually hate this Swedish metal band. Are they actually a metal group? Are they something a little bit more? Is it an ego project? We're gonna dive into all of the reasons and more. I'll be sure to break it down with the internet's general consensus, and then I'll add in my own personal opinion. As always, I appreciate your support on this series. Drop a like on the video, subscribe if you happen to be new, and if you want to check out more of my Ghost content, then there's reviews linked in the description down below, and I would also love to hear from you in those comments if you agree or disagree with these points. Why not get the most easy to breeze past one out of the way first? They're not actually a metal band, John. A Ghost or something else entirely. They're parading around as if they're a metal outfit, and they're just not. They're more of like a rock or a pop band. Well, Ghost and their leader, Tobias Forge, aka Cardinal Copia, aka Papa Emeritus 1, 2, and 3, whatever iteration of the Catholic Church they happen to be imitating at the time, he said a lot of different occasions that Ghost is always meant to be evolving, that they're never just going to stick to one thing. If they're feeling guitars on one album and not another, then they're actually going to do that in the studio. Whereas something like Meliora is going to be more guitar-centric, you saw Pray Kel be a little bit more pop-friendly with songs like Dance Macabre. I really do like this hybrid that they've kind of nailed down. It's the Ghost-ism about it. And while some people are definitely going to have their jimmies all kinds of rustled, it's okay. Calm down a little bit. If they're not always doing metal, I think you're going to survive, because Ghost have made it clear that they want to take on the 60s, the 70s, the 90s, the 2000s, and of course, Ghost. Style over substance is a major complaint that I see regarding this Swedish band. I think a lot of people look at their stage setup and the elaborate costumes and makeup that the Nameless Ghouls and of course Tobias himself, whichever iteration of the frontman he's portraying, I think they see that as just, they're not actually having any talent or skill, and they're just playing dress up, and it's all about that and not about the music. I would 110% disagree with this, because if you actually listen to the music of Ghost, you can see their influences, their layers, their heart and emotion in the music. They're definitely at times singing to get a rise out of you with some of the Satanist stuff and of course the Catholic Church, the imagery that they're able to flip around, but I think it's enticing to add that extra storyline, and why not go for it? If you can actually kind of flesh something out and add an extra layer of intrigue, think like Gorillaz for example, the lore surrounding that group, then why not go for gold? Because if it's not actually detracting from the quality of the music, it shouldn't really matter. And if anything, having seen Ghost live myself on multiple occasions, I think the theatrics only play into it even further. In fact, I was downright scared when I saw them in 2013 and had no clue who they were, and there's Papa Emeritus reaching out into the crowd to steal my soul. Perhaps number 3 is the most understandable reason of them all, although I still don't feel it's entirely representative of what Ghost actually is. Tobias is the sole creative force behind this band. Of course, he has collaborators, but in terms of permanent members, it's just him. Now you have the onstage setup of the Nameless Ghouls, the Ghoulettes, their saxophonist, and everybody else that plays into it, but those members, they do change out. And after the drop of Meliora, there was a massive lawsuit surrounding this band. Of course, the nameless ghouls unmasked Tobias to reveal his identity. Up to that point, we did not know who anybody was, and they were claiming that they were unfairly compensated, that they were mistreated behind the scenes, and that things were all just a big facade, that Ghost wasn't an entity as a whole, it was just one man being dominant. And to an extent, I think that this probably could come off as a toxic workplace environment, and I understand that environment, but I also do see the other side of the fence. Tobias was pretty forthright when explaining his side of the story, and of course, the lawsuit has since been closed out and dismissed outside of court, I believe. And it's one of those things in situations where you actually boil it down and you're like, does this actually have that much impact on the music, especially given that these seemed like more of quarrels between bandmates than anything actually all that serious? To some, maybe it was, but to me, it's kind of a bump in the road and hopefully something that Tobias learned from. Number 4, their sound either rips off or else feels too derivative of older rock and metal acts. I've seen people comparing everything from Blue Oyster Cult to Black Sabbath and a whole lot more from the 60s till now to Ghost. And while they definitely are known to wear their influences on their sleeves, I think that they are not the only band that has ever been influenced by someone, and if you don't admit your influences to an extent, then, I mean, you're lying. Nobody is really all that completely creative. Now, it is fair to call them out if they are too closely monitoring somebody else's sound and dialing it into their own performances. And while I can see something like Squarehammer or even Rats, the influences, where that comes from, whether it's rooted in the 80s or older styles of rock or metal that feels flashy or glamorous or even stripped back on something like He Is, I can appreciate that, and I genuinely don't feel that they've stepped on that many toes to get to where they are. They've clearly branched out their sound a whole lot, and they're not about just pleasing one specific type of fan, the metalheads especially. So if Ghost are kind of curb stomping on your influences and saying like, oh, you know, like we just took this sound and we threw it into our own, that's one thing, and I could understand if you would get upset there. But if they're just taking on a different sound and embracing ideas of the 80s or incorporating synthesizers or a way of playing the guitar that feels similar to something else, I don't think that's necessarily a reason to be up in arms. Number 5, hype killed the video star. Being overhyped can definitely be a problem, and music publications pushing something so hard to the point where it feels like a train trying to go down your throat, nobody really wants that, and if you're spitting it back out, I don't fully blame you. I can also see why people would be upset with the music publication exclusively, but also sometimes bands can be a little bit too forefront and forward-thinking in their promotion of something, and it can feel like beating a dead horse. But at the end of the day, I genuinely don't feel like them being publicized and talked about and praised should take away from the work. I think back to a completely different genre. Earlier this year in 2020, Fiona Apple has a critically acclaimed album, and I had people telling me that they wouldn't listen to it simply because every critic was praising the hell out of it. That is a really dumb way of thinking. You can turn that off. You don't have to look at those reviews. You could listen to Ghost for yourself and decide at the end of the day, but apparently for some who just want to be mad about it, that's too much to ask. Hate it or love it Ghost Edition? I personally love them, but I can see where some of the criticisms come from, and I would love to know where you stand. Don't forget to drop a like on this video. If you want to see me review Ghost in an album format, then tap this card here, or tap here for the most recent episode of Hate It or Love It. All of my socials, including my Patreon page if you want to support financially, can be found down below, and I'll be back soon for more on Beyond ARTV.